I'm nervous.
Sorry.
Hello, we are live. So,
Oh, we are. Okay.
welcome
Hello.
everyone. Welcome to Getting Cozy. My name is Jack Fields, author of the debut novel Scarlet Citadel, produced from Legion Publishing, and these are my fabulous panelists today. We can go from panelist to panelist just to start things off. If you could introduce yourself and tell us where we can find you, what you're working on, and that would be absolutely wonderful. So, will we start with Daniel?
My name is Daniel Schinhofen, publisher and writer, I guess, since I do have a company. But I've written many books at this point over the 7 odd years I've been a writer. I am a Dirty Filthy Harem writer. It's right out there in the front, so everyone knows. Nobody can be surprised when they get to it. I don't want anyone to suddenly be shocked by this news. I actually had a book that got published today. It was book 7 of my Lux Voice series. And as with all new books going out, I am now terrified that this will be where everything falls apart because imposter syndrome is a very real thing. It doesn't matter how successful you are, unless, of course, your name is Travis, who's successful at everything he does in life, and we'll let him go now.
How marvelous, Daniel. Well done. So congratulations on your release. Travis, congratulations on your Hugo.
Unfortunately, I didn't actually win a Hugo. It's a common misconception. They just give it out at the Hugo Awards. So, I got the Astounding Award, which is like the new writer award, but it's a separate thing. But I do get a tiara, which I'm obliged to wear at any public events until I
Why don't you have it on, Travis?
next year.
Why don't you have it on?
I don't have it yet. It's in the mail
It's
because
in
I didn't go to
China
Chengdu,
still.
so I'm waiting for it to arrive.
It's made in China. No, I'm kidding. Bad joke.
Anyway, my name is Travis. I am the author of Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust, which comes out in a little under 2 weeks. And I'm a narrator. I narrate an ungodly number of books, and I used to make video games. So that's me.
Fabulous. Will we go to Siska?
So I am Seska Small. I have about 5 years of podcasting, and I'm about ready to launch a new podcast, which I'll be sure to share with everybody in the group once it goes live. We're just kind of keeping everything under wraps until everything's finalized and we get the first couple episodes in the can. But I am probably most known in fandom for volunteering at DragonCon as the Fantasy Lit track director, as well as the Blasters and Blades podcast, which I was on for many a year. And then, and I've also staffed for a couple others, LibertyCon, and I am the Deep South Con in next year's programming director, and that will be Contober in 2024. So, and I am half of the brain that runs Page to Stage. So just a few things.
Yeah, sorry.
So, but I think.
Yes, very impressive things at that, and it's wonderful to have you, Seska.
Well, I think Travis is the first indie author to win anything at the Hugo Awards, so that's very good, breaking the mold.
Absolutely, and will we close this fabulous introduction out with Katie Hanna?
Oh, thank you. I'm Katie Hanna. I met my husband in a computer game and moved to America, so that's like my claim to fame, I guess. I've written a lot of books. I think I'm hitting 19 now. Somnia Online is my biggest, probably second most well-known series, because I wrote System Apocalypse Australia because I forget about things. So yeah, I tend to write. I tend to write very I don't write cozy. I wish. Oh God, I wish I wrote cozy. I want to. I tend to write very like condensed timeline books. So yeah, and I have a new one out called Library System Reset that's available on Royal Road right now, and it's probably the closest thing to cozy I will ever write. And it's not.
But you seem like such a cozy type person. Like I can picture you with a latte and blankets.
Oh, exactly. I read it. I love reading it. I just every time I go to write it, I need like some mega violence, and it just snowballs from there.
That sounds like Jenny Koch. She always wishes she wrote fantasy, but when she starts to write a fantasy, it always turns sci-fi on her.
I'll dive right here into my opening question. So my first question is, Where do cozy fantasy and cozy lit RPG come from? Let's talk origins. Do they arise from the popularity of cozy crime, a genre in and of itself? One story above all other stories, the way Tolkien's shadow seems to, drape across the face of the 20th century fantasy? Or is it a bit more organic for you? Less obvious progenitors like the mise-en-scène of certain key novels, certain characters people latch onto, or even the language stories employ? KT, why don't we start with you?
Oh, I can't hear.
Oh, can
Did
you
you?
hear us? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I can. I just didn't hear your question. Like it just cut out for a second, and I was like,
Oh
"What?"
no.
The whole thing?
No, just the question you asked.
Oh, literally just about the origins itself, and then
Oh, okay.
continue.
I'm a huge cozy mystery person. I love them, and again, when I try to write murder mysteries, they become fantasy or sci-fi stories. So it's just not apparently in my wheelhouse. My brain doesn't work that way. But I would say with the success of cozy mysteries, because they're amazing, they're just you can just literally grab your cup of hot cocoa or a latte and you can sit down with a blanket and just curl up with that book. And it's just fantastic. Like I love that. And I don't feel danger from them, but I want to know what happens next. And that's what cozy fantasy does for me as well. Like I love it so much. And I just wish I was a Travis and could write it. And I'm not. So I think that's where it came from the mystery, like because of the success of that. I mean, you kind of want more fantasy and then you want even more fantasy. And that's when you get the lit RPG aspect coming in.
I know what you mean. Yeah, the sort of the commonality, the DNA is
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you just, and it's like, that's not enough because then like it's like, okay, well, yes, but what if magic? And what if if swords and sorcery? And what if a totally different world? And then you're like, yeah, that's where you end up.
I think though some of it is we're a generation that grew up with Murder, She Wrote, which is the original TV cozy mystery. But I think the rise of it, because I've really seen it. I was a bookseller for many years, and so I think the rise of it really comes from the fact that we've had so much stress in our real world that having something where the stakes are not life or death, you're not dealing with a plague, World War II, nations being invaded. While that's fun and really great and epic and literally epic fantasy, it's also kind of exhausting when you're living that sometimes in real life, you know? So I think we've really seen, like, it's been there, but I think it's really shot off in the last couple of years just because we don't need the reminder that we are mortal.
So, I mean, I feel like cozy fantasy has been kind of hiding in plain sight for a long time.
Oh, it's definitely been there all along. But I mean, you see the shot off on the market where it's like one of the new hot genres.
I think some of it is like, it's like putting a very specific lens on it because I think like Terry Pratchett, I think is largely cozy fantasy. I think that basically every Studio Ghibli movie ever made is basically cozy fantasy. And I think it's hard to argue that those aren't popular and haven't been popular. I think The Hobbit is basically cozy fantasy or is really, 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 really close. And again, hugely popular. But I think that there is like a certain, it's like something coming into focus. It's like seeing one of those like pictures with all the dots and you just see it the right way and then you can't unsee it. I think that there is just,
all ended.
There has been there's just a way of seeing it as a singular thing instead of just something that you find in something else that you're reading. Oh, I'm reading a fantasy and it's just got some stuff in it that I like. It's almost like the genre identifier. It's like got an identity at this point because people just want that for a period of time. It's like, this is just what I want.
Everything's gotten much more of a subgenre identifier since the digital marketplace too. So, but yeah, I mean, Anne McCaffrey wrote cozy sci-fi in some ways, like, and she wrote one about King Arthur's horses too.
I would say even the one about Manly and the Harpers is very kind of like cozy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the Harper Hall trilogy is very YA cozy sci-fi.
But yes, I adore the examples that you both brought up. Perhaps we'll return to those later. I think to pick apart those might be actually really tremendously useful. Terry Pratchett's personal favorite as well. Daniel, could you please weigh in on the idea of origins? It'd be so interesting to hear your thoughts.
Well, I don't come from the cozy mystery side of things, because me and mysteries never really got along. I'm too analytical when watching mystery stuff, and it bothers the hell out of me. But the idea of cozy in fantasy, Pratchett was great at spinning the yarn of, this is, you're following Rincewind or Vimes, and it's just them going through day to day with some other major thread that's woven through. But it never felt like, oh, hey, we got to go kill the Dark Lord today, guys. You know, there was never that one thing that was going to crush everything if it didn't get finished. I come to it from slice of life, especially Japanese slice of life, where it's just a guy trying to go through life and get things done and deal with the little aggravations that pop up, whether that's trying to open up a coffee shop after retiring from adventuring, or it's a guy who just wants to settle down and craft Magitech while being harassed by Fey nobles. It's I just want the time to sit with a character that I enjoy reading about and not have to worry about the world ending or the demon lord showing up or any other major catastrophic event that's going to make my heart rate go up. It's one of the reasons I write them, because I want that nice calmness.
Yes, I love how you spoke about that. It speaks to something that Seska talked about, the negation of the epic. The next thing I wanted to talk to you briefly about before we dive into questions from commenters, of course, is contents themselves. And in fact, we've touched on the subject already for all four of you psychics. Okay. The mole had been working very hard all the morning, spring cleaning his little home. So begins Kenneth Grahame's The Wind in the Willows, published in 1908 at the outset of the 20th century.
I love that book.
Oh, it's lovely. And for me, that line, it seems to summarize cozy fantasy and cozy lit RPG in many ways. A setting totally unblemished by strife and in fact rooted in familiarity, home, or a desired capacity for such an idea as home and labor. My question to the four of you then is, what makes the setting and plot of cozy fantasy so unbelievably compelling for readers over literal centuries of stories? Will we start with Travis?
I think some of it is the fact that it doesn't actually require you to travel terribly far. You know, I think that in a lot of ways it's about bringing the fantasy to you. You know, it's like that feeling you get when you're a kid after you read like the C.S. Lewis and you're like, maybe if I do go into this wardrobe, I might actually end up in Narnia. That things seem possible, right? Because they seem like they're immediate. And I think that, you know, you read something like Dune and you're going to some other world and all of the rules are rules that you don't know. And there's a certain distance between you and this place that you're going. When you read cozy fantasy, you just don't have to go very far, because part of the attraction is that it's reminding you that everyday things can be special, things that you can have, things that you can relate to. You know, I mean, I can make a baked good. I can sit down and have this. And if it's got some sort of magical stuff that makes it taste extra great, that's fabulous. Or if, you know, rat people are making it. It's just that immediacy, that sort of relevance to like everyday life, I think.
That's fabulous. And also a welcome to Richie. Hello.
Hi.
So Richard, we're just talking about the plot and the sort of the qualities, the content of cozy fantasy that really makes it so terribly compelling. Can I get possible to get KT's thoughts?
Oh, I'm a mom, as I think a few of us are parents, and just the idea that it's just the home, and that's kind of like the relaxing. It just feels relaxing, and I don't get much relaxation in my life. So,
stop blowing up everything.
Yes, but I don't like. It's just this lovely sensation that just washes over you, where you just feel like you can sink into it and just experience it instead of having to pick up after the dog, pick up after the kid, get the kid to the practice, pick up the kid from the practice, make the dinner, do the shopping, keep the house in order, blah, 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 write a book. It just has this this sense for me that is just relaxing, and I love to read it. So I think for anybody who grew up in the like 80s, 90s, that's probably a very nice calming effect.
That's so interesting that you root it in an actual like epoch of time. I love the idea that at different points throughout its development, it appealed to different people for different reasons. As Travis said, been living in plain sight for a long time, only now sort of codified. That's wonderfully said, KT. Siska, can we get your thoughts?
I think some of the appeal is building on what Travis said and Katie said, is it's familiar. You don't have to learn a whole bunch of terms, a whole new language. But I think some of it, and this is going to sound really horrible about humans, we like gossip in a way. I mean, we like, yes, there's sensationalism, but we also like to just kind of peek behind other people's curtains and see what that slice of life is. And, what would life be like if, like, my favorite cozy series is one set in North Georgia where the entire town is actually urban fantasies. Killer Frost is the new one that just came out in that series, and I cannot remember the name at all right now. But it's all like, oh, what would it be like if Santa Claus was my uncle and I was a fae living in North Georgia in a town that accepted magic, but the humans who found it thought it was just like a tourist event, and so it's that slice of life, but also kind of the peek behind somebody else's curtains and forget your own drama and relax into their issues, because you know how to solve their issues, even if you don't know how to make dinner right now.
Oh, it's very articulately put. Daniel, would you like to weigh in?
Well, they told me cozy fantasy, so I did a lot of thinking.
I'm not sure I can add a whole lot to what everyone else has already said. But it's the mix of the mundane, the going about your business that helps people relate to it most, like Travis said. Part of that could be, like Siska said, though, the fact that you're watching somebody else go through the day-to-day emotions, and it's so much easier to relax when you're like, oh yeah, he should totally do this. And it's not something like, dude, you're gonna die if you go through that door. But it's just like, yeah, you really forgot that your wife was coming home and you said you were gonna make dinner, and it's not me, so it's okay. I can enjoy this because it's not me about to get yelled at.
Yeah, you can relate to it, but it's not you.
Exactly. So I think the other panelists have basically cleared up most of it for me anyway.
And yet, such a wonderful exclamation point on those points made, Daniel. Richie, since you're coming in just now, could we possibly get a more consummate idea? And what's your relationship to cozy fantasy? And how do you feel about where it's come from, what it's doing for us now, and what makes you love it?
So I think, as Travis said earlier, with cozy fantasy, my start was The Hobbit. I do consider The Hobbit cozy fantasy because even though it is, this nice epic journey, not a lot of action happens from start to finish. Like, there's a few fights here and there, but it's mainly about the relationship with Bilbo and the dwarves and, getting back to the mountain. So that's kind of the cozy aspect I really enjoy about it. And my first, I guess, installation into slice of life and current cozy fantasy would be Mana Harvest by Wolf Locke. I want to say it's the author. Very Stardew Valley-esque, little action here and there, but it's not a lot. And of course, Legends and Lattes was like a big hit for me. And it just, with how many books I power through that are nonstop action, nonstop, like everything, it's nice to have that little break and just have a nice enjoying time. So, it's wholesome. I've been trying to power through more cozy fantasy more and more each day. I just finished a few actually, and I love the genre now. It's just, it has a new take for me, and it's my other escape.
I'm not sure you can power through it though. It's more of a friendly stroll, isn't it?
With how
it is much more relaxing, I think.
It's still powering through for me because I don't get any time to really sit down anymore. So
I read. When I read, I binge. When I do anything, I binge. So I read super fast, and I get that book and it's done. So yeah, and then I want a second one so that at 1 a.m. I can be like, well, I'll just start the first chapter of the next book, and then it can be 6 a.m. and I'm done with that one as well. And I'm like, oh well, I've got to get the kid to school.
So I was peeking through. I don't think we have any. Do you know what we have in the comments right now? We just have pure emphatic yeses. No questions. Just like well said, that kind of thing. So I have a few little delightful backup things, and actually going off something that we've touched on already. A long walk on the beach with Long Island iced tea for 12 hours straight. Well, okay. Looking at, I suppose, examples like Terry Pratchett and The Hobbit, the idea of conflict leaps to mind. These are not conflict-averse stories whatsoever. I'm thinking in Terry Pratchett's City Watch novels, Feet of Clay, for example, a story about golems, consciousness, and a pushback of automatons versus freedom. These are incredibly conflict-rich ideas that Terry is more than adroit enough to explore. When it comes to cozy fantasy, where does conflict stand for you? How much of it do you want? What shape does it take? Let's start with Daniel on this one.
Honestly, I don't really try to quantify when I'm writing. I'm not looking at how much conflict and stuff is going to go into the books. Since most of my books are more laid back, conflict are the things that pop up. Since there's no overarching, oh my God, we're all going to die moment. I don't try to fit in or take out whatever happens. As I always describe my writing process as after action reporter more than anything else. But if you're going to keep it in the realm of cozy, it should not be a speed race down the freeway through the book. Like I said earlier, it should be a nice cozy stroll. There could be moments where you have to sprint past a dangerous bit, but other than that, you should just be able to, take a walk with the dog and not have to worry about too much.
I'm just interested to follow up with you for a second, Daniel, on an idea that you brought up about the Dark Lord. Is there room for the quintessential archetype of the grand evil vizier? Is there room for that in a cozy story? And if so, what shape does it take?
Sure. The series is probably going to be quite extended because like I said, if you're going to keep it cozy, you don't want to rush anything. But I think that the idea of an epic cozy fantasy is totally possible. It would take somebody of a much better caliber than me to make that happen. But I wouldn't say no to it.
We'll just make Travis do it.
Doesn't Beware of Chicken have like an overhanging, like it has that overhanging like darkness, like there's something looming, but it's like way away and it hasn't happened yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
So like it's there in the back of your mind.
I don't think that they have to be mutually exclusive. The second book I wrote has a necromancer with an army of the undead. It's just not the primary point of the story. It does intersect. It does figure into things. It's part of the reason that people end up where they are, and it does involve itself in some of the conflicts they have. But the balance of the conflicts are all relatable conflicts. The weird thing is that, like I said, my book was low stakes, but it's really not. It's just small stakes. It's personal stakes. So, like, I'm never going to fight an undead army. I mean, that may be big in terms of scale, but it's not like high stakes for me because I can't relate to it in any way at all. Like, I just don't have to worry about that. But, like losing my job or moving to another city or having a relationship crumble, these are all actual stakes that I can understand and relate to and that are personally high to me. But I think one of the keys to the stakes and the conflicts in cozy fantasy or cozy anything is that ultimately they have to resolve in a way that's positive, that leaves people better off than when they started. So that ultimately when you finish reading the book, you feel better than you did. So I think you can probably bend almost anything that you want to that end, as long as you kind of keep those things in mind. I'd hate for everybody to like shoehorn themselves into only one kind of conflict or only one kind of evil or only one kind of subject matter, because I think that's really kind of shackling yourself to restrictions you don't necessarily have to have.
Travis, can I get a advanced copy of your book then so I can read through it and understand it a little more? Just,
Absolutely.
Well, you
Um,
can't
You
leave the
can get
rest
it
of
in
us
3
out
weeks,
now.
2 weeks after it comes out.
PDF
It's
around
such-
here somewhere.
it's a terribly sweet idea that one of the things that sort of signposts the genre is that there's not even the potential of it pushing you away at the end. So there's nothing to worry about. It's always going to be this cozy, warm hug, a last embrace from, it's a lovely idea. And Seska, what are your thoughts on the conflict?
I think so. Cozies are much more plot driven than action novels are, but I think it's really hard to have any kind of story or growth because every stories, typically the ones people engage with, are in academically are defined by having character growth, and you can't have any real growth in life without having some sort of conflict. And you could have a big bad evil. I mean, you could do a cozy fantasy from the big bad evil's perspective. I loved Dungeon Keeper. That was a great game. So you could do one as, this pesky hero keeps trying to bring priest around, and I really, really, really just want to get this taken care of because my henchmen are driving me nuts about it. So, I mean, you could totally do that, but you have to have some sort of conflict. I think the biggest thing with cozy fantasy is if there is a global arching huge thing going on, typically in cozy fantasy the main characters in it are not going to be the linchpin. They're not, you're right, Lord of the Rings has a lot, but Frodo I think would be kind of the exception to the rule of putting the ring in the thing. But then again, it didn't have to be Frodo who did it. I know. Some people are gonna from the Lord of the Rings tracks out there are gonna
no,
come
sorry,
at
that was
me,
very
but
that was a very
that's fine.
engaging point. It was actually almost even more engaging though is this idea of the Dark Lord running the dungeon, just this coterie of lovely little imps. It's very somebody's going to steal that, Seska, for sure. Richie, could we possibly get your thoughts on this?
I think there should be a little bit of conflict. If there is going to be conflict, I guess action-based combat or conflict, put that at the beginning, make it the prologue, or like a story, memory, flashback, etc. And then if you take that and then evolve it into some sort of internal conflict, whether it's dealing with grief, the loss of a friend on the battlefield, or loss of a loved one who died, etc. That's the conflict I guess I'm more looking for, just because it has to do with that character's growth, how they're dealing with certain aspects of their life, and what they can do to heal.
I love the idea of injury or pain being dealt with initially, and then over the course of things heal. That's again that sort of cozy embrace idea. KT?
I agree. I like the idea of having an evil there. Like I said, like I bought Beware of Chicken Up. I'm sorry, I absolutely love those books. But it does, if you introduce like an overarching something that's overshadowing slightly, but it doesn't really interfere with the cozy, but it's part of the cozy because they'll eventually get to it. That's what I like. So that's a really good way to then be able to breadcrumb stuff in, so that you can breadcrumb little hints in as you get to it and really work that into the story. And gosh, I wish I could do that without lots and lots of violence thrown in between.
Just write the story and then just dribble it in.
Well,
don't do the Saint, what was it, Dragon Ball Z, where one fight lasts 4 episodes. It's got to be quick.
I was
Nocturnal Falls, that was the series that I was thinking of, and she had some fight scenes in it, but they're quick. They're not the main point of the story at all.
Well, I was trying to make my library book a cozy, and then it just didn't happen. So,
we have
the only thing cozy about you is your hot chocolate, huh?
No, her hugs are cozy too.
They are. She does the best hugs.
She does.
How glorious. We had a question that came in from JD. What are some of the tropes of slice of life / cozy reads that people who aren't familiar with the subgenre should know? It's a very kind of provocative, galvanic question. Will we start with Travis?
Phew. I mean, I think that it's pretty easy to trade on tropes from a lot of other genres. It's pretty easy to rope in a lot of like romance tropes, two people, one bed, hurt comforty kind of stuff. These things fit into cozy pretty well. So I don't know if it's a trope exactly, but I mentioned earlier that you kind of need to feel better at the end. It's kind of like having the happily ever after in a capital R romance. It's just a given. You kind of need to have that, I think, to sort of fit within the genre. But also crucially, I think that cozy kind of needs to also have at least some teeth to it, or it tips over into becoming saccharine. I think there's a real line to ride between making something that's so safe that it's unbelievable and unrelatable. So we talk about having like a Dark Lord in the background or stuff like that. I think you still have to have a certain amount of grit in the grit in there to make the pearl. It just can't be too easy, or all of a sudden it feels like YA or children's fiction, I think.
Sure. That great Stephen King quote: "Write as close to the bone, as honest as you can, and the reader will believe you." Richie, what's your thoughts?
It's going to be a slow burn. As I said, I power through cozy fantasies. That's not how they're meant to be read, but I power through them just because my backlog is just way too big, and it keeps growing and growing. But just expect a slower paced story and just enjoy the ride. That's the best thing to do, because to think of it as watching a I don't want to say like a drama movie or anything, but like a dramatic comedy, or not even, or maybe
A drama.
Yeah. Or maybe a rom-com. It's, just a fun story, and just enjoy the ride. It's meant to just be there for you.
But I mean, you touched on something really good, which is one thing. Cozy fantasies don't tend to be long. If you see something dubbing itself cozy fantasy and it's the length of a David Weber novel, walk away, because it's not going to be cozy.
No.
Not unless it's an omnibus. Because
and-
they do tend to be fairly quick reads or audiobook listens.
Yeah.
Unless you're
By the nature. What?
I powered through Legends of Lattes, Cursed Cocktails, and Sword and Thistle, I think in one sitting. Like for the audiobooks, I didn't like press stop on them at all. And I sat there for the 7-8 hours that they were, and just enjoyed every part.
Yeah, I can't do that because they give me numbers and then I mess up.
That's a lovely compliment to pay to those authors, though, Richie. KT.
Oh no, I just said unless you're reading Beware of Chicken, which is just keeps freaking going on and on and on and on. So
Well, I mean, it's a web novel, KT.
I know.
That's stable
I'm
web
aware
novel.
of this.
If it's a web novel, that's part of that genre.
Yeah.
Is that they're the song that never ends.
Believe it or not, that's one I haven't started yet.
Oh,
And everyone keeps telling me to.
don't start it, because you just won't stop, and you'll just be hanging for every chapter, and it's evil.
And the next book is due out soon, so
Daniel, I think the only person we didn't hear from in this was you.
I can't actually add anything to what everyone else said, so I am going to bow out of the question.
I love that every time it comes back to Daniel, he's the lovely little. Everyone just said something so good. Little point at the end of the exclamation. It's terribly smart.
Daniel is a wonderful human being.
Absolutely.
He just pretends not to be.
He should just start going first.
You called yourself a
Exactly.
dirty, filthy harem writer. I think you're a freaking awesome harem writer.
Yeah.
I
Maybe
want
that's
him
what you should
Blinking
have on
Beasties.
there.
Brian, I was speaking to Brian Norden and Jez after our D&D session today, and you were one of the subjects brought up, Daniel, just how kind and lovely you are. So yes, make that part of your talk.
Terrifies me to no end, I just want to say.
Yes, can't fucking imagine why.
I mean, Jay Boyce loves you. She thinks you're great.
We got a great question here from Mira Rose. What are the biggest challenges in writing cozy fantasy and keeping it interesting? I think Daniel, since let's have you be the start of the exclamation point this time.
You're gonna take away my shtick of just saying they all said it and then just stopping. I mean,
That's right.
If I wanted to be put on the spot, well, shit. Okay, yeah, I did put my name out there. So, I completely forgot the question because I was trying to
Just
avoid
say
things.
that's what she said and go.
And
That's what
is
Siska
the
said.
biggest challenges in writing cozy fantasy and keeping it interesting?
And keeping it interesting. The biggest challenges with cozy fantasy and keeping it interesting are, for me, it's going to be making sure that the story has a point that it's working towards. Not to get lost in just the humdrum day to day, which can happen, and I've seen it happen with some stories. There has to be a point to it. Like I'm gonna reference the fabulous book called Legends and Lattes. There was a point. It was getting the coffee shop set up, and the trials and tribulations that came with it. For some of my books, Sean from Binding Words, he just wants to be left alone to craft, but the nobles just won't leave him alone, so he has to keep going on. If the nobles had stopped, then the series would have ended. But I know some people would be like, well, nope, I got to keep this going, and would have continued trying to push forward with it, which would be a mistake. So as long as there is a point for the story to continue, whether that's getting coffee shop set up, being able to just love your wives and craft the technology you want to do, or defeat the demon lord, if somehow you've created that epic fantasy cozy fiction, there has to be something that drives the story forward, and not letting it get mired down too much in the saccharine humdrum nature that it could devolve into.
Yes, that quality Travis was talking about, where nothing is at stake at all, and it just exactly that word, saccharine. Siska?
What the challenges are of the fantasy art?
And keeping it interesting.
I think the fact is sometimes it can get a little formulaic. You have to make sure that you're not following. Like, it's always good to have like a map and a beats, and definitely people expect certain story beats in a subgenre that is so specific, but you also have to make sure that you're bringing your own spin on it. I mean, academics will say that there's only 5 stories, 5 original stories, everything else is just a riff of it. But you really do have to make sure you do that. And I think how we can do that, or rather how authors do it, is by bringing in their own life stories and experiences, because everybody's story is different. KT, Hannah, and I, we've talked tons. There's lots of overlaps. Jay Boyce, we have lots of overlaps, but yet they're still very different life stories. So you have to make sure you're bringing in some of that perspective. And I think you have to not be afraid to tiptoe around some of the groups, I don't want to say special identifying groups, but things that other people, not everybody wants to read a story about a white cis het female, right? You get old of it. So writing those stories with different perspectives gets very important. And it's not just people want to talk about diversity, but it's also what keeps it fresh.
Well, that's engaging, kind of a diversity of the lens of the story. That's fabulously put. KT?
Yes.
That's my shtick. You get your own.
KT, thank you so much.
No, it's more like one of the biggest challenges, and all I can think of is actually keeping the story cozy, because there's a fine line.
You mean the part you keep failing at?
Yes. There's a part I feel like where it's like kind of slice of life, but cozy, and you just, I feel like you can't put too much action in it. Like, it's something I think takes a lot of like finesse that I don't have, that other people do. And they're
would you say that cozy fantasy is inherently YA youth friendly? I mean, this is actually a good question, because most of the cozy fantasies I've read, yes, there's some adult stuff, but there's not like,
I mean,
ripping adult stuff. There's no super spice of any violent variety or chauffin variety.
I would say that that's not necessarily true. It doesn't have to be YA.
Yeah, I
okay. No, I mean, that's just a question that I had, because as I said, most of what I've read has been.
I do like killing things. It's therapeutic. Sorry.
Dude, you know what? You're a mom. I'm a single mom. We have to kill something eventually.
Right.
It can't be our kids. We get in trouble for that.
Just remember, she comes from Australia. She's used to
Yes.
things just dying everywhere around.
I know, but that's what I like about her stuff is because I'm not from there. I love reading stuff that's not about places I'm from, right? That's the diversity of just the different backgrounds and bringing that into what you're writing.
But my answer to the question would be I'm probably not the best person to answer that question.
No,
Because
look,
from a personal aspect, I have failed abysmally at it.
well, no, sorry, but from that failure, perhaps we can and sorry, not a failure because you're succeeding so marvelously in everything
I don't
else.
know about that.
But we can actually draw a kind of a parallel. So Daniel was speaking earlier a little bit about Travis's novel, and Travis, what might be kind of useful is would you be comfortable zeroing in on Legends and Lattes? What were the challenges, if you're comfortable speaking about it?
I mean, I wasn't thinking about it in any of these terms at the time because nobody was tossing around cozy fantasy, and I was just writing a book that I wanted to read. In thinking about it after the fact and writing another book and in talking to people about the genre and what I think is important to continuing the kind of vibe that I was using in the first book, at least for me, was that in a lot of ways what it is it's boiling down to really elemental storytelling stuff because you can't. It's like taking away the CGI budget from like an action movie. If you can't have a lot of explosions and you can't have a lot of spaceships and you can't have superheroes knocking down buildings, what makes your story go? And it's ultimately about characters changing over time. And we can do a lot to kind of paper over the lack of that in stories where they're epic fantasy or sci-fi and you have like the full budget at your disposal. But when you take that budget away for all of the big ticket special effects stuff, you're left with, I have to tell a story that's relatable to human people that they will care about, even though nothing is exploding. So I think that's a kind of a general storytelling challenge.
I feel like he just said there will never be a Marvel cozy.
I see, and I disagree. Honestly, I could see like the Guardians of the Galaxy
It's just how
cozy.
Marvel tells their story.
It would just be because they had, one of the characters just had to be, articulated in incredible 3D, even though he's like a worm man who sits in his cozy hole. I don't know.
Did you find writing in the space that you were writing in, trying to take away those elements, as you say, that elemental storytelling, was there difficulty or was it delightfully easy to reach the raw change in those characters?
I mean, I found Legends and Lattes fairly easy to write as far as that went because for me it was personally relatable. And Siska was talking earlier about the fact that you need to invest some of yourself into the story. I mean, it's a story. It's a story about somebody in their 40s who's been doing a job their whole life and then quits to move to another city to start a new career, and it discovers like all of these people that they didn't know existed. As somebody who in their 40s had done a job their whole life and then quit and moved to another city and started a new career and then met all these really wholesome people, nothing autobiographical at all. So it wasn't really difficult to write in those terms. I think you just still have the same storytelling challenges as anything else. Do I feel like this chapter was worth reading? Do I care about what happened to these people? Are these characters interesting if they're in the same place and interacting together? I mean, those are just basic elemental story problems. If you're talking about like managing tone, so that it feels properly cozy. I think it's kind of like a juggling act of a certain percentage of nostalgia, because I think nostalgia is very powerful for like our feelings of comfort. I mean, that's kind of essentially what it is. It's like, I'm nostalgic for this. I long for this feeling of comfort that I used to experience. It's one of the reasons I think Ghibli movies are so specifically resonant is they're all pretty nostalgic. And again, that just making sure that ultimately when everything is done, you feel better. I think you can have violence. I think you can have difficult themes. I think you can have, I think you can have pain because these things are part of life as long as ultimately you're left with a good feeling and it's ultimately a story that you can feel nostalgic about. That I have this retroactively nice feeling, warm feeling about this.
I
What
now want to write a
Travis said.
superhero. I now want to write a superhero cozy fiction where it's just like Superman, who's just he's done, he's retired, He just wants to, write for the paper, and that's it. And just for the fun of it, because it sounds like a good story to me all of a sudden.
Oh, Daniel, I think there's an Alan Moore story where exactly something like that happens, where Superman retires, and it's terribly charming.
I was gonna say for like superhero, the first thing that came to mind for superhero cozy fantasy. Now I'm thinking back because Spider-Man Blue came straight to mind, and I was like, no, that's just more heartbreaking than it is cozy. That one is a monster of a story, even though there's not a lot of action in it. It's just Peter Parker recording a message for Gwen Stacy on the anniversary of her death, and it's just about how Gwen and Peter became together, and it's a really great story. I was in tears at the end, but it's just so I guess that could be considered cozy.
Richie, I was just going to say, did you want to weigh in about this idea, and what, because there was a few kind of fabulous jumping off points there.
I don't know where to start.
This is a cozy setting. We have much patience.
You're
unless you're Richie and you rip through the book.
Yeah, I think that's more my anxiety than anything, because I'm just like, okay, I need to finish the book.
Yeah, I do that.
I don't know. I think it's just with how much how much content I consume on a weekly basis at this point. The cozy fantasy or the cozy setting just it hits a whole new stride for me, because I was using my fantasy and lit RPG and game lit books as an escape to help with my anxiety and depression. And now it's come to the point where it's like, okay, if a book doesn't have action, am I really going to enjoy it? And then I, found cozy fantasy, and now I'm like, okay, now I want more of that. So that way I have that nice break, because I care about the character development of stuff, because my best friend Joel and he's the mechanics expert. I'm the emotional person. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what the characters are dealing with, and each of their, feelings with the growth aspect. So yeah, that's
no, look, sorry, that was very eloquently put, and thank you, sorry, for being so raw about the depression and anxiety. It's not easy to talk about.
I've talked about it on the show, and I mean, I've thanked authors for giving me that escape I needed for the time period that the book elapsed, and that's why my collection is just growing and growing each and every day. My wallet hates it, but I love it, so it's okay.
No, but seriously, thank you. It's wonderful. And just to quickly note, Siska had to bow out. Thank you so much for joining us, Siska. So I think we have another little question here. Oh, this is something we actually spoke about earlier from Jay. How about an evil author / narrator MC? The author bit in that perplexes me a little bit. It's perhaps a little bit of a thrust finger of accusation. Is there room for that in the cozy genre? Richie, were you going to jump in there?
Yes, I think there is, because I saw a comment earlier about having a the evil die and have someone reincarnated into that body, and them just trying to redeem the reputation of that said villain. I think there's a few ways that it could be done. Not really necessarily, maybe the population sees this character as evil, but they're really not. It's just what they were branded, either because, let's say, they were a goblin or an orc, undead, etc. They just want to, have a good life. But of course, I guess let's look at let's take Beauty and the Beast, for example. Just specifically looking at the Beast aspect, when they first see him and everything, they're like, wow, he's a monster and everything. Then you get to know him and you're like, wow, okay, he's actually, he's kind of a good guy. He actually cares about, the people in the castle, even though he was kind of a, pardon my French, a dick to start. But it just has to go with that character growth. So I think it can be done. It has to be done correctly.
Travis, perhaps you don't see yourself writing it, although perhaps you do. But do you see a place?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. I mean, I certainly didn't expect to write cozy fantasy.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's just about ultimately the relatability of the character, and whether, again, you feel good after you read it. So you just have to find your angle into it. okay, let's say someone resurrects the ancient evil overlord, right? It's been thousands and thousands of years. Well, he has these very quaint, kind of charming ideas about evil, a certain honorability, taking care of the troops, making sure they have good food and a healthcare plan. And modern evil is just kind of brutal and filled with assholes. And so the ancient evil overlord is reawakened, and the modern evil that resurrected him is really, really unrelatable. So you have this relative value of evil. Now I actually kind of really like this sort of charming old evil overlord. I want him to succeed, so I can get on board with that. You just have to find your angle in on making them a relatable sort of evil.
I have to ask Travis, what's the dental plan like? Because I'm already willing to sign up. If the dental's
Well, when
stay.
you've got skeletal minions, it actually turns out to be relatively important. I mean, lots of ossification.
They gotta have those shiners,
issues,
right?
Yeah, these skeletons are grinning by default.
So
that's
I got a
what's the-
question.
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah,
want to
sure.
get this opinion, especially from like KT, since she's the mom in here. Would Despicable Me be cozy? The animated movie Despicable Me, would that be cozy? Because let's look at Gru. Gru is, always considered evil, but he's just a good guy. He just does evil stuff.
I think it would be verging on cozy. Like, I love those movies, and I feel like they're feel-good movies.
They are.
Despite having a evil character that tries so hard to be evil and is just so hilariously bad at it sometimes. I love him. I don't know. I would say, I mean, it's not like that's something you don't show your kids either, I do generally cuss a lot. I do, but I love those movies.
Cats are cozy and they're all villains.
Right? Cats are all villains. I agree with that. I actually no. I have a cat who is not a villain. He is an amazing, beautiful, ridiculously nice cat. Doesn't bite, doesn't scratch. Just gets up and walks away if one of the other animals tries to hit him. The other one is a little shithead. Like, he's
the one who looks so good, KT, is just hiding it really well.
Well, he's been hiding it really well for 10 years. So.
Well, I mean, once you're good at something, why stop?
Yes, sure.
But I would say,
this is my shithead.
Oh, hello.
She's the terror.
No, I only have my corgi in here, and he is too heavy to pick up. So
still cute though. The idea of
I would say it's cozy.
Oh, completely. And the idea of the glamour of cats is interesting as well. We talked about Terry Pratchett earlier. Terry Pratchett's elves are compared to cats in that if they looked like toads, you'd realize, quote unquote, what nasty buggers they are. Daniel, did you want to weigh in on the evil thing? There's a great question that's come in that I actually think you could lend a lot of insight into, but did you have any thoughts on the evil thing?
Yeah, my thoughts compressed down to very simply, I think everyone else has covered it really well, and I don't have a whole lot to add.
You see, this is the thing. It's the nostalgia of it. It's predictable. You can come back. So look, I have to send this question towards Daniel first. From Mira Rose, is there such a thing as cozy fantasy harem? And then they stipulate, this is missing from my life.
I mean, yes. You probably have not read any of my books. Then, I would point you towards some of the nicer ones though. That probably wouldn't. Let's say Aether's Revival.
Yes.
It does have action, but it does have harem, but it's very, very slice of life, very cozy. I would say Binding Words, but you will have your heart torn out a few times. But there are redeeming moments in it as well, and that series is going to end at the end of this year, beginning of next, on the 11th book. So
Binding Words is really
good.
There is.
It just means finding them. So yes.
Yes, comfort in polyamory. I suppose that kind of lends itself towards a question of overall relationships. If you're representing these elemental ideas within your story, as Travis was saying earlier, most stories are forced to contend with. Does cozy fantasy have room for really, really raw stories about relationships, perhaps between people romantically or aromantically? Is there room for that sort of really raw stuff?
I would go back to what Travis has said earlier, because I think it works across the board. As long as the story leaves you feeling good at the end, I think it could have its moment. Just try not to completely tear out everyone's heart in the middle of it.
Yeah, don't treat it like a
about where
John
you
Green.
choose to end the
Yeah.
story. Where do you choose to end the story? Do you end it at the happy ending? Do you end it in the middle of, the dark night of the soul, or do you end it after, the happy ending when things start to get awful again? You're just choosing an end point.
Yes. And the denouement, actually, sorry, that brings up denouement in cozy fantasy. Can cozy fantasy have a secret kernel of darkness at the end of its
God,
story?
yes.
Oh,
Heck
God,
yes.
yes.
Give that twist.
Yes. Yes. I mean, so Legends and Lattes, when I wrote it, it had 2 points of violence. The point was that the first sentence would be the only violent thing that happened in the book. And the sentence after the last sentence was when the other violent thing happened. I mean, it starts with a death and it ends with a death, ostensibly. You can hand wave it a little bit, but that's how the book is bookended.
Yes. Anyone else want to weigh in on that idea?
I agree with Daniel. And
Same.
Travis.
Same.
Will you people get off my shtick? I did not give consent for you all to grab my shtick like this.
Well, look, we're almost out of time. We've received our little 5-minute warning from Geneva. I suppose with closing, we can kind of close out the same way we will bookend, as Travis said, where we can
With a death.
we can. Oh yes, hopefully not. Let's hear one more time who you are, where you are, what you're working on at the moment, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank you. So, will we start with Daniel?
For a second there, I thought you were going to go backwards to really bookend it, but that's fine. My name is Daniel Shinhofen. You can find me on Amazon and Audible. If you can figure out how to type out that really long last German name, you will find me. I am a dirty, filthy harem writer. This way you are not shocked and surprised when you pick them up. They are slice of life, so they are very slow paced. You will not normally find the end of the world in any of them, but you will find polyamory and open relationships with people learning what it means to care for multiple people in them. My last book was published today. That was Lux Voice 7, Rail Laid Plans, which is my weird Western fiction. And honestly, just being here and having KT and Travis and Richly.
Richly.
I'm
I'll
sorry.
take it. I'll take it.
You're apparently Richly now, Richie. and moderated by Jack. It's been a blast of the last hour, and I really appreciate being here.
We appreciate you, Daniel. Richly.
So I didn't get to introduce myself earlier. I apologize for being late. I'm so sorry. My name is Richie Stevens. I'm the host of Stats on Stats, a Lit RPG podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Rich Dolphus or Stats on Stats Lit. I am and twitch.tv/Stats on Stats, where I do game streams, but also have been doing cold reads because I am stepping into the world of narration. And
Nice.
I have 2 different series I'm recording right now. I'm taking over recording for Apocosmos by Demetrius. And then also I'm doing Stardivers, as Stephen Landry announced earlier today. So I'm pretty excited. Also, if you're following me on Twitter, I'm sorry. Blame Geneva. Blame Matt. I'm getting bombarded with feet pictures right now.
And you have tasted defeat then, sir.
I hate it so much. But God, Geneva, no. No. So I apologize in advance.
Oh,
Because that's the brand now, apparently.
Yes. But oh
oh
my
man,
God,
she did a banner.
he's got a
I hate
banner.
it. I hate it.
But-
Geneva, we're going to
yeah,
be
it's
talking
noise.
later.
Geneva, I
Richie-
didn't think I could love you any more than I already did. I do now.
Oh my god.
Richie, would wish you luck with your recording endeavors, but you don't
Thank
need
you. I
luck.
appreciate it.
Well, you don't need luck. You've got skill. Will we get an outro from Travis?
I'm Travis Baldry. You can find me at travisbaldry.com, although I don't know why you would. I'm Travis Baldry on whatever social media you're probably on. Bookshops and Bone Dust, the prequel to Legends and Lattes, comes out November 7th on paperback, ebook, and audio. I'm perpetually recording some audiobook, and a new one comes out every couple of days. So if that's your thing, I'm sure there will be more.
It's a majority of my library.
And KT, could you close us out?
Sure. I'm Katie Hanna. It's actually short for Katie. So my name is actually Katie. So I'm actually lazy. It's not really clever. My my current project is called Library System Reset Overdue. It is about a magical library that has to be pieced back together bit by bit because evil overlords that have yet to be defined in the book, they're defined in my head. Sought to break the library, and so they have to rebuild it. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's on Royal Road, so you can read it for free. I do have it on Patreon as well, but you can read it for free on Royal Road. And otherwise, I wrote Somnia, System Apocalypse Australia, and the series Last Chance, which nobody ever reads, but you should because it's awesome.
I've read
And
it.
it has a non-binary main character that is never gendered, and I'm really freaking proud of that. And that's me. I love lit RPG. So.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you so
she
much
gives
for
the
tuning
best
in.
hugs. Let's not forget the biggest.
She does.
The
She
best
does.
hugs.
It's a great point. And with that, thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Thank you to our wonderful panelists.
And thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
everybody.
Will we
Thank you,
wave?
Jack.
Thank you,
We'll
Jack.
do the Queen's wave. Farewell. Farewell.
It's just
Elbow, elbow, wrist, wrist, wrist.